Acrostic is a poem or other form of writing in which the first letter or syllable or word of each line or a paragraph or other recurring feature in the text spells out a word, message, or an alphabet. And this acrostic tonight will be an alphabet acrostic. In Judaism, it is often used when the subject of a poem is complex and requires nuanced and comprehensive approach. We can see acrostics in some psalms or in medieval poetry. The use of the full alphabet reflects the attempt to cover all aspects of the topic. B. Black Lives Matter is a political movement to address systematic and state violence against African Americans, as it is written on the Black Lives Matter website. In 2013, 3 radical black organizations created a black-centered political will and movement-building project called Black Lives Matter. The project is now a member-led global network of more than 40 chapters. Black Lives Matter is an ideological and political intervention in the world where black lives are systematically and intentionally targeted for demise. It is an affirmation of black folks' humanity, as it is written on their website. As many people in the world, this week I immersed myself in the study of racial injustice, oppression, and modern social issues of inequality. I don't consider myself an expert, but I think it would be wrong to be silent today. In the words of Talmud, Shtika kehuda'a damya. Silence is like an approval. I'm going to skip quite a few letters in the English alphabet in my acrostic tonight. Perhaps it is my way to say that there are many gaps in my knowledge and understanding of the matter, which should be filled in as soon as possible. And also, of course, it is a way to save a little bit of time. C. Cultural appropriation is a theft of cultural elements for one's own use, commodification or profit, including symbols, art, language, customs, etc. Often without understanding, acknowledgement or respect for its value in the original culture results from the assumption of a dominant, often white, culture's right to take other cultural elements. Black Lives Matter campaign resonates with the Jewish story, and I'm sure it resonates with many of us watching this service. But this time, it is not about Jews. It is not about us. We should try to listen and learn as much as we can about their story and try to be allies and not to say, I know what you mean, I know exactly how it feels, because maybe you don't. Maybe this is a different story, although very similar to a Jewish one. Heschel. Abraham Joshua Heschel, a rabbi who died in 1972, is perhaps most famous for his activism in the civil rights movement and the iconic photographs of him marching with the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in March in Selma in 1965. 2 years before the march, on January the 14th, 1963, Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel gave the speech entitled Religion and Race at a conference of the same name that assembled in Chicago, the US. There he met Dr. Martin Luther King for the first time, and the two became friends. In his speech he said, "How many disasters do we have to go through in order to realize that all of humanity has a stake in the liberty of one person. Whenever one person is offended, we are all hurt. What begins as inequality of some inevitably ends as inequality of all. Our rabbis taught, those who are insulted but do not insult, hear themselves reviled without answering, act through love and rejoice in suffering. Of them, Scripture says, they who love the Eternal One are as the sun when rising in full splendor. Let us cease to be apologetic, cautious, timid. Racial tensions and strife is both sin and punishment. Lo ta'amot al dam re'echa. The Torah commands us to not stand idly when the blood of our neighbor is shed. Jewish tradition explicitly condemns violence in all forms. Do not stand idly by the blood of your neighbor. Martin Luther King. One of the most frequently quoted phrases by Dr. Martin Luther King is, "Violence is the language of unheard." It is often used as justification and inspiration to engage in the acts of violence. However, the same speech in which Reverend Martin Dr. King Jr. said these words opened it with the following: "Let me say, as I've always said, and I will always continue to say, that riots are socially destructive and self-defeating. I'm still convinced that non-violence is the most potent weapon available to oppressed people in their struggle for freedom and justice. I feel that violence will only create more social problems than they will solve. But at the same time, it is as necessary for me to be as vigorous in condemning the conditions which cause persons to feel that they must engage in riots activities, as it is for me to condemn riots." Pikuach Nephesh. Mishnah in Tractate Sanhedrin famously states, "Whoever saves the life saves the world, saves the entire world." Human life always was, is, and will be the highest value in Judaism. Pikuach Nefesh is a principle that we should break any religious law, almost any religious law, if there is the slightest chance to prevent harm and danger to human life. It applies to all lives, whether it is a black person or a white person, policeman or a rights organizer. All lives should be saved. All systems which lead to more deaths should be broken. All of us shall respect and protect the most basic and the most sacred thing that all of us, all people have, our lives. Tzelem Elohim. In several ways, humanity is set apart from all beings created in 6 days of creation. The Bible does not say God created the plant or the animal. It says God created different kinds of plants, different kinds of animals in the book of Genesis. In striking contrast, it does not say God created different kinds of men and women of different colors and races. The Bible, the Torah, proclaims God created one single mankind. From one single source, all of us are descended. All of us are B'Tselem Elohim, created in God's image. White privilege. the accumulated and interrelated advantages and disadvantages of white privilege that are reflected in racial ethnic inequities in life expectancy and other health outcomes, income and wealth, and other outcomes, in part through different access to opportunities and resources. These differences are maintained in part by denying that these advantages and disadvantages exist at the structural, institutional, cultural, interpersonal and individual levels, and by refusing to redress them or illuminate the systems, policies, practices, cultural norms and other behaviors and assumptions that maintain them. Zipporah. One of the characters in this week's Torah portion is called Zipporah. This week's parasha ends with the complaints of Miriam and Aaron against Moses because of Cushite woman he had married. He had married a Cushite woman, they said, about Moses, and they spread bad rumors about him. She is not mentioned by name, but her tribal or national label. Jewish commentators traced Zipporah's origin from Ethiopia, and therefore this story can be read through the lens of current struggle and fight for racial equality. Zipporah is dark-skinned, different, other than the rest of the people. In the words of my colleague, Rabbi Alexandra Wright, I quote, God punishes Miriam by afflicting her with tza'arat, leprosy. Her skin turned snow white, as though God is retaliating against her by saying, as you criticize this woman on account of her skin color, I will turn your skin as white as snow, and this will be your punishment. God and Moses set the Cushite woman as an equal, the object of love and beauty, casting aside the slander of Miriam and Aaron and delivering a harsh lesson against the devastation wreaked by inequality and oppression. As I said in the beginning, this acrostic has many gaps. It doesn't tell the full story. I myself lack in my knowledge and understanding, and I am guilty for not doing enough to ensure the justice and equality for all. But shtika kehoda'ah damya. Silence is like an approval. You might ask, so what? What can we do now? Well, perhaps we can do something. We can fill the gaps in understanding, in diversity, to learn and teach, to listen and to speak out against injustice, and hope that there will be a time when the prophetic vision will come to the reality. Ken Yehi Ratzon. May this be God's will. Amen.